Okay. Thank you so much, Jazmin, for inviting me to speak on this today. I was really excited to be able to contribute to this incredible series. And I know that when we spoke, that you had said, emerging farmers are really those farmers who are a bit established and are now growing, right? They're seeking to find, what does their sort of next chapter look like. So that is what I will be focusing on today. That's how I built this talk. But we will have plenty of time for questions, and all my contact info is at the end as well. Uh, First and foremost, I work for Taste the Local Difference. And a little bit about us is that we know local food. We specialize in local food marketing. We're a marketing agency. We work with farmers, specialty food, and craft beverage producers, and also anything adjacent to that. So things like agritourism, food trucks, restaurants, really anything across the food system value chain. We really love to uplift and support because we believe in thriving local food economy. So we absolutely love partnering with MSU and Michigan Good Food Fund and love the work that they are doing to also uplift the local food system here in Michigan. A little bit about me. I'm the director of impact here. I feel like I have the best job on the team here because I get to work with all of our partners to help create these different partnerships that each partnership looks a little bit different, but we not only can folks come to us and hire us for marketing services for their farm or food business, but we also work with a lot of partners to help create different types of arrangements that will a lot of times this looks like, education like this workshop or other sort of subsidized like technical assistance partnership arrangements that will provide different types of marketing services. You'll see an example that I've included of this later. And so it's really exciting to see the incredible impacts and ripple effects of this work across the food system. So it's very rewarding. But I myself have over 20 years of experience running different businesses of all kinds and sizes. And before I joined the team at TLD, I had my own business consultancy. I was doing sales and marketing and growth strategy for entrepreneurs. And so all of that, and actually even before that, I was in farming and I was a beekeeper and worked a bit in food access and different things. And so all of that combined really informs the work that I do and the way in which that I approach how I teach marketing and some of the examples that I'll be giving you today. I am also just a really huge local food enthusiast as well. So, some of what we will be covering today is how to use customer insights to plan for expansion, why it's really crucial to use your own data and review it first before planning growth, how to research various growth paths strategically before investing in new marketing systems or staff. This is going to save you a lot of time and a lot of headaches and hopefully a lot of wasted investment revenue. Um, Marketing and sales essentials that support scaling. And again, we will have plenty of time for questions. And I have a free resource link for you today that ties directly in with what I'll be talking about. But I'm also going to point you to tons of other resources that we have as well on all sorts of marketing topics that are very industry specific. So, growth planning, let's get into it. It's really, really, really important to know that before you make growth decisions, you should be reviewing all of your numbers to make data-driven decisions. And you really want to be auditing your sales data first. And here's what I mean by that. it's really critical to think about different sales channels. And some of these, you could even, put them in the chat if you would like to. Say, if you're at a farmer's market, a farm stand, if you have a CSA, any of the places that you are currently selling your product, if you want to, feel free to tell me in the chat. These are what are called your various sales channels. It's super important to look at each one of them and look at the sales revenue per channel first. And then also you want to look at the margin per sales channel. And the margin is that difference between, what is the actual revenue that you're making, the actual money that you're making, versus your expenses. So it's that profit margin. And so therefore, it's really important to think about additional costs that are going to be associated with each of those sales channels. So these are things like transportation, packaging, staff, fees, marketing costs, et cetera, right? You want to be sure to be tracking all of these things as much as possible. If you were, thinking about this for the first time, if this is your first time seeing this, and you're feeling anxious because maybe you're realizing that you haven't been tracking this as well as maybe you could have been, just know like that's okay, that's normal. Going forward, these are really good things to start tracking. And in the chat, a few folks have said CSA and some private chefs. We've got farmers market, community CSA, and small food stores. Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you for letting me know. So when you have that data, and this is also just good data to be tracking consistently all the time, right? So whether that is week to week, month to month, quarter to quarter, whatever, works for you, figure out a system, put it into place, and start tracking it as best as possible. Sometimes things are going to be a little tricky to get down to the penny, but even just having a rough estimate is good to know. And you might even realize, a lot of times, especially with pricing for different things, um, especially because of my background working with so many different entrepreneurs, pricing brings up a lot of feelings for people, right? It can be hard to do objectively, but it can be easier to do objectively when you really know your numbers, when you know exactly all of your costs that it takes to get something to market and what you need to make off of that item in order to be properly compensated so that you can stay in business and that your business can be viable and sustainable. The next part of growth planning is that it's really important to look beyond just the numbers, to think about your overall vision and your purpose for why you're doing what you're doing and what you ideally want your life and your days to look like. So some other things to look at are current team size and capacity. If you have a team, your team might just be you right now as well, but also take that into consideration, right? What is your capacity? Or if you have some full or part-time staff, what is their capacity? Also, your desire for leadership. A lot of times when we're thinking about growth, it's important to think, do we want to be the leader, right? Do we want to be managing people? Is it a skill that we have? Is it a skill that we desire to learn? All of those things are really important to keep in mind and be honest with ourselves about. How do you want your weeks to look? Do you want to be doing all of these different types of things like markets, right? Do you want to be going to multiple different markets, or do you want to be dropping things off, doing different deliveries, or, uh, you know, various different options at play here? Neither is good or bad or right or wrong. in general, it's, there are better or worse answers for every individual based on who you are and how, again, what your individual goals are. Think also about your emotional and mental load and your personality, and also like the season of life that you are in. Especially, let's say, if you have little kids, that is going to change the dynamic, especially, if you are primary caregiver, versus if you don't have little kids and you don't have those caregiving responsibilities, right? Or you don't have an elder that you're also a primary caregiver for. And again, also personality ties right back into like desire for leadership, things like that. And then also additional supplies and systems needed for different types of scaling, which I'm going to go into in more detail a little bit later. But again, these are good things to think about because it's really easy when, you look around and other people who are in the same industry and maybe a bit, what we would consider like further along than we are, to look at and go like, oh, they're having more success or they're making more money. And then we think like I should probably just duplicate what they're doing. And then I will, have what they have too, right? But it's also really good to consider, do I want like exactly that? Is that whole package the right thing for me? And it's okay if it's not. Next, in thinking about customer data as it's going to inform your growth, think about your raving fans. I love talking about raving fans. I love thinking about raving fans because I think that we can learn a lot from our raving fans. And your raving fans these are the people who if you could clone them, if you could, have them just as your soul, like the sole amount of people that you sell to, that you would, because they are a dream to have as customers. They're probably telling other people about you, you're referring people to your business, and they just are always telling you great things about your product. And they make you, they remind you of why you do what you do. So I would also love to know if you want to put in the chat, um, keep somebody in the back of your mind that is a raving fan of your business. You don't have to say, who it is or anything, but maybe just think of like some characteristics or something about them that makes them a raving fan, or something that they say about your business, or something that they do that shows you that they are a raving fan of your business. And then what you want to do is write down. I used to do this with my clients. Like I would have them take out sheets of paper or even like big pieces of paper and write out, names of any of the raving fans they could think of, their best customers, and then write down underneath anything they could think about those people, and then look across at everything you've written and circle what they all have in common, right? And because when you see it all together, you might start to notice some patterns that you hadn't even thought of before, right? And then you can start to think like, how did they learn about you? How, what are they purchasing and how often? And if their overlapping qualities are putting them into one ideal customer profile or two. And what I mean by that is, so for instance, way back when I first got into the world of farming and food systems, I ended up becoming an employee of the farm I got my CSA from. This was like way back in 2010. And I realized that a lot of our CSA members in particular were either uh, people like families with young kids, or they tended to be like retirees, like working professionals that had were now retired and really loved, they like were really into shopping local and like supporting things that were good for the environment, things like that, right? And trying to be healthy as they were aging. So thinking about your ideal customer profile, looking at your raving fans, it's going to help you figure out who is best to be continually marketing to as you keep going. Even if you're not in like a super growth phase, like a super scaling growth phase, it's still going to be good with your marketing. Next up is customer surveys. Don't ever hesitate to send a survey when it makes sense. One thing I will say though is like you don't want to over survey people. But surveys can be really great. I don't know if any of you are already, like, especially if you have a CSA. A lot of times, folks that do CSAs will do a CSA at the end of the season, or I'm sorry, a CSA survey at the end of the season to help inform their plan for the next year. I know, again, that same farm that I used to work for, we sold at markets wholesale and had a big CSA, and we would always do a CSA survey, and it was really, really, really great. Just keep in mind, try to keep your surveys concise and specific. You're gonna need to send some reminders, right? Because we all are inundated with a lot of information. So you don't want to just like send one email out. You're going to have to send reminders. And if it's something that is more broad, like to all of your customers, you are probably going to want to put it out across several different marketing platforms and channels. And also, you don't need to send surveys to everyone if you're only trying to figure out certain aspects. For instance, the CSA, right? If that is all you are really concerned with, just do the CSA specific survey. Um, One thing to keep in mind is, especially with the specificity, right? A lot of times people will just sort of broadly on, like, let's say a Facebook business page, write like, hey, what do you want us to do next year or grow or, have it very open-ended, which isn't necessarily terrible. Just keep in mind as you're looking through the responses, see if you can tell, like, look at who is commenting and look at if you actually recognize them as somebody who has already been supporting you. And take it with a bit of a grain of salt. If somebody is commenting and giving feedback, but you don't even really recognize them as a customer, that you don't necessarily need to take their word as like, oh yes, we must do that, because they're not a raving fan, right? They're not a repeat customer. So you want to skew more heavily towards the people who are already have already proven that they are your target buyer. One other thing I want to point out, and this is like a whole thing on its own, and when we get to the end, and I will tell you where our other free resources are, I'm going to point you in the direction of where you can find more info on this, because we have way more info just on like search engine optimization, and Google Analytics and all of that. But I did want to point this out. This is another thing that if you do not have this already set up, I highly, highly, highly recommend doing it now. It cannot pull data retroactively. So even if you are like, Erika, I do not have time to dive into this right now, so I'll just set it up in the future. I would like to discourage you from doing that because you will lose all of the data right now. So you can get it set up right now and it can work in the background and do its thing. It's totally free. And then that way in the future, when you're ready to dive into it a little bit more, it's already been there and you'll have historic data from this point forward. So Google Analytics dashboard, there is a link to a setup resource here in the slides. But you can also just, Google Analytics dashboard setup and look for that. And Google has their own instructions that will walk you through that. And this works if you have a website. They will show you how to get it set up, get it linked to your website. Again, it's totally free. And it's going to show things like users, session, engagement time, where your traffic is coming from, etc. And a little bit more on that. So, users are how many people are visiting, sessions is how often they come, traffic source, where they came from, top pages, what they're seeing the most, and then engagement time, how long are they staying? So these are just some good things that will allow you to get some additional uh, data and insights and everything on there. In the webinar that we have on this, we did recently on search engine optimization for farmers. We also talk about Google Search Console, which is another thing like sort of similar to this that is also free that you can get set up. Oh, thank you, Jazmin, for putting the link in the chat. And both work hand in hand to show you how people are finding you through Google search and in getting to your page. And then Google Analytics shows you what they do once they get to your website and how they engage there. And that can help you better understand, what are they doing? How are they engaging? But we go way deeper into it in that webinar, that separate webinar. Next up, it's really good to think about what might need to go. So sometimes before growth, we might need to prune. And this means scaling back, outsourcing, stopping something entirely. So now that you have gone through all your data, you might realize that you have unprofitable crops, market channels, entire offerings, etc. Now, these might be things that you're like, oh, good. I've hated doing that anyways. And now, but I was doing it because I was too afraid to like let it go. But now I confidently can say like I don't need to do it. Phew, great. Like we just have to figure out how to not, do that anymore. Or you might realize like, oh, I love doing this thing, but now I have the data to figure out a new strategy going forward, how to make it work for us better. It can also help you realize like, are there people that you've been trying to make happy, that you've been trying to appease, but it's taking more effort than you're actually getting back, right? So maybe you have like a really difficult like the people at one market that you go to are just not aligned. Like they just don't get what it is you do. They don't get your pricing, something like that, right? And then you're like, oh, great. Now we can just like put more energy into this other market, different things like that. And then also, is there a task that it's really time to admit needs to be handled by somebody else? This is incredibly true for marketing. You're going to see why in a minute when I really dive into it. It is essential for growth. I know, especially as a former farmer myself, I know farmers are super scrappy, super independent. You could figure out how to do a million things all by yourself, but it is impossible to grow beyond a certain point by still doing that. You have to be able to outsource. But the good news is now you're going to have clarity. You could start making that plan. So let's get into it. And we actually just saw this. We're sharing it in our team chat this week. So I added this slide because I thought it was so great. We already have an example of Lakeview Hill Farms assets coming up, but this is from Organic Grower Magazine. And they were talking about as they grew and they went into grocery stores and opened up their market, how they had to make decisions that meant both scaling back on growing certain things themselves and also really upping their like marketing and packaging, right? So down there at the bottom, it says, we stopped growing some crops and started buying from other farmers. So they had to make that decision, like I was just talking about, that it didn't make sense for them to keep growing everything themselves. They had to focus on certain things they could do really well and then source from others. And then also with grocers, they had to really invest in packaging and consistency, which you're going to see an example of coming up. So I thought that that was so perfect. It was so timely. Wanted to add it in. Now, your marketing considerations. First up, budget. Ideally, what we always recommend, because people will say, like, how much should I budget? And I know it's not a fun answer, but we say it depends because it really does. So instead of just saying a flat amount, we like to say, think of it like a percentage, right? And even still, this percentage can depend on a lot of different factors, but think of a percentage that will work for you. And that way it can grow with you. So as your revenue grows, then that amount, so like let's just say it's 10%, right? So 10% of a larger revenue number means you have more money to allocate towards marketing as you grow. I also want you to reframe it and think of it like risk management. So rather than like, oh, it's this extra expense I have to be spending, like I know sometimes it can feel like that for a lot of people. Think of it like risk management because if you are spending time, money, energy, literal blood, sweat, and tears into growing your amazing product, but then you don't have a plan to sell that product, that is a huge, tremendous risk, right? So marketing and especially marketing planning, having the right assets in place, all of that thing, all of those things, that is good risk management. And it should be treated as a non-negotiable for growth. Just fundamentally, it is not a nice to have, it is a need to have because especially nowadays, like unless you are a very lucky unicorn scenario, you will likely need marketing of some kind. So some essentials are a professionally designed brand kit, a website that is optimized for mobile, and depending on your particular needs, it might also need some e-commerce, good quality photos, email marketing software. If you're going to be doing any email marketing, you need actual email marketing software. You cannot use like a Gmail or a Hotmail. People need to be able to unsubscribe from marketing emails from a legal standpoint. And it's very important that you claim social media handles and fill in all of the info in the bio section, even if you are not planning to post there, because you don't want somebody else to accidentally or purposely claim your business name there. So now that we have that baseline, we're going to strategize some growth opportunities here. We got a question in the chat. Please give an example of social media handles to look into. So in terms of platforms, so you would want to use, your farm name, your business name. Um, and then so that would be like Facebook, Instagram for sure. But this could also potentially be things like TikTok, Threads, and like Blue Sky. Those are and like maybe X, but like those are that's less worrisome or like critical, but definitely Facebook and Instagram is those are really good to claim. Even if you're not planning on using them just yet. Or potentially ever, it's still nice to have them and just have the info and have it reroute to your website or somewhere else. So let's say you have your regular sales channels and now you're thinking about wholesaling. Even if you're not yet thinking about wholesaling, stick with me here because there's a lot of good info here that is also going to pertain to direct to consumer. Okay. So your ideal client for a wholesale relationship should typically be defined separately from the ideal consumer client, meaning that somebody who is purchasing your CSA is different than a specialty store that is going to be purchasing for wholesale or a restaurant that is purchasing wholesale. I will say though, what is helpful to keep in mind is to think about that raving fan CSA customer that we were talking about earlier. And then think about, where are they shopping? When they're not getting your CSA box or shopping at the farmer's market stand, where else are they shopping? Specialty food retailers, farm to table restaurants, right? So this is going to help you think through this process of potential places that you might be uh, reaching out to for wholesale opportunities. And you want to think about for your wholesale client, potential things like how often do they order? What quantities do they accept? Do they have a packaging requirement? What's their wholesale process? What are their payment terms? And there might be some other things that you want to consider as well. And you're going to do some customer research and ask questions of about 10 different businesses across categories like institutions, schools, retail, restaurant, etc. And this is going to help you figure out which avenues you may want to start to move into as you grow. Additionally, I want to point out that some best practices of doing this. Don't reach out during peak busy times, right? So if you're reaching out to a restaurant, you're not going to want to reach out on a Friday night when they are slammed, right? That's not going to make a good first impression. You also want to connect with the person who makes purchasing decisions. Also, make sure that your values are aligned, right? So, your brand values and their brand values, make sure that you're going to be a good match from the start as best as you can. Be realistic about what you can provide. It's way better to, you know, under promise and over deliver than over promise and under deliver. And don't be afraid to negotiate and keep asking questions. So now as you're doing those interviews, you can create ideal client profiles for the types of wholesale buyers that you want to market and sell to. But you can also do this process for direct to consumer too. You can duplicate it. You're just going to need to adjust, some of the questions and the specifications that you're looking for. Now, as you're doing your research and outreach, you're going to go back and you're going to utilize that ideal customer profile and the data that we talked about in the first part to highlight to potential wholesale accounts why partnering with you is a win-win. So, thinking about your raving fan, and if you're like, I know that my people, they love farm to table dining, they love restaurants that prioritize, um, you know, purchasing local. They love regeneratively grown products, et cetera, right? And you have data to back it up, right? As you're doing your pitch to say, hey, here's why you should purchase from me and I should be a wholesale customer of yours. That makes a really strong case for your pitch. You're backing it up with good data, but you're also going to back it up with really good marketing assets. Because here's why marketing matters when scaling. Buyers are looking for consistency, professionalism, and trust. So think about this kind of like a job interview a bit, right? You want to put your best foot forward. You want to make a really good impression. Strong branding communicates product quality before they even taste it. And marketing systems are going to save you time and make ordering easier for buyers. This is a big win. So especially this second point I want to talk about just a little bit here is if you think about in the case of if you have a packaged good, if you go that route and make a value added product, or even not, even if it's a fresh product, but like greens in a clamshell, it is really important to think about if you're used to selling at a farmer's market where you can really engage and tell your story yourself right there with customers, you won't be able to do that if your product is in a store. Your product is going to have to tell the story for you in your absence. So it's really important that your product itself does a good job of that, that the marketing that is there does a good job of that. So you want to think of your marketing as part of your product. It should reflect that same care and craftsmanship. So now we're going to do a little deeper dive into each of these. So you want to match your brand to your buyers as well. First and foremost, I want to say your brand should reflect your, brand values and all of those things, right? We don't ever want to be solely like changing everything just, for buyers. Like we want to be true to who we are. It's our business at the core, right? But we want to be sure, and this is why working with branding professionals is smart because there is like branding is like an art and a science, right? Where you take what is core to you and what will resonate with them and marry it together to create that brand kit. So that is your logo, your colors, your fonts, all of the stuff. And so that's why it's really important to identify wholesale partners, ideally, if you can, before investing heavily in packaging. Tailor your packaging and marketing tone to match their expectations, again, without sacrificing yours. And you want to be thinking, what is going to make my product stand out on their shelf, right? So, again, in your absence, when you cannot be there to talk it up, and somebody's going to be walking by a million different similar types of products, yours really has to pop. So here's that Lakeview Hill farm again. And here's sort of what I was just talking about, even with fresh product, right? This is their greens in the clamshells. And as they were talking about, with their packaging in that article, it should align with your target market and sales outlets. Then think about cost and ROI. ROI means return on investment. So how worthwhile will it be for, your upfront investment to buy that type of, packaging or whatever marketing resource it is? How much of a return on that investment do you expect to see from that? And how quickly will do you anticipate you'll recoup that investment? And it's important to know what packaging is going to make the most sense first, and then work with a designer experienced in packaging design next. And then think about going all in if you can. Include supporting visuals like shelf talkers, bottle tags, or display graphics, any small details that really drive in-store sales. This can also help when you are pitching because you are going to be able to say to a potential buyer, hey, I have like this whole marketing kit that's going to come with my stuff. You're not just going to get a high quality product, but you're going to get a product that has really beautiful marketing that's going to help it sell. Another marketing asset is a sales that I want to talk about. There's a few here, but I want to quickly point out this sell sheet on the side. This is a branded sell sheet. And so it's not just, a Word document that lists the items with their pricing and their contact info. It actually has their brand story at the top. It also has, you could see natural, relaxed, happy, tells a little bit about um, their farm just in three brief words, has their logo, has a photo, right? It looks nice, right? It's more visually appealing and interesting than just a plain document. It's also good to have pitch email templates that are branded as well, so everything is cohesive. Contract templates, a DocuSign platform that will just make things a lot easier, faster, an invoicing system, and a delivery system, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a second. But having everything ready to go for pitching new accounts and getting contracts signed quickly is going to save you a lot of time. It's going to make this process easier, and it's going to make your wholesale buyers happier to work with you. As I already mentioned, I know this part at the bottom talks about the sell sheet, but we already talked a bit about that. But it's really great. You don't need to be cluttered or anything like that, but you want it to stand out. So let's talk about what is in a pitch. Going to be pitching to these different places. So it's important to have a short intro, little farm bio, kind of like let's just go. back. Here's what I mean by farm bio. It's just a short, you know, sentence or two about the farm. Just gives high level info. We're not talking about like a whole novella here. Then you want to think about the benefits. What's in it for them? Um, what is going to be uh, knowing that your people, your raving fans already are in there, shopping, like your raving fans are the same as their ideal customer. Say, hey, we already know that your demographic, your target audience is purchasing our XYZ type product, da 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 da, right? Again, you can keep this brief. You can have some proof, some little like testimonials or other data that can be kind of woven into those benefits as you're writing it out. Features are the specific info. This is the details. That's kind of like the sell sheet, right? You can even just like link right there to the sell sheet, say like give a little brief overview and say you can see more on the sales sheet, which is attached. And then next steps, which is a clear call to action. So that would be things like I would love to talk more. Here's a link to my call calendar to book a time with me, or have a few call dates and times. Would love to chat more. I'm free on these three dates and times. Let me know which one works, and I'll send you a calendar invite. Some optional but good things, having that branded email template, like I talked about in the previous slide, or even just having a branded email signature, having that branded sell sheet, and then also a call calendar or date and call options. Question from the chat: what type of requirement should you include in a sales contract? First and foremost, I will say, because I'm not a lawyer, it is very important if you are in business, have a business attorney. As somebody who has had a business, I had a business attorney. Um, because you should get an actual legal document drafted. Please, 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 for the love of everything, do not just go on a chat GPT situation and ask it to draft you something, because there is like nothing legally guaranteed or binding about that. I know it's frustrating as a business owner. Like I deeply, deeply know, again, as somebody who's owned many businesses, to have to have another expense. But it is really good to have an actual attorney look at your individual situation and write a sales contract. However, some things that you should think about are things that are meaningful to you in with your business. So that could be things like your payment terms, like if you want a net 30 term, meaning that you require getting payment within 30 days of the invoice, or other parameters that are really vital to you that you want somebody you're doing business with to abide by. Think of what those are and have those ready to be put into your contract. Next up, your website as a trust builder. This is a really cool example that I want to share with you that is actually tied directly to MSU. So your website is going to build a lot of credibility, and it should be user friendly. And you can include wholesale information and clear product descriptions. And also, e-commerce integration can simplify reordering and increase efficiency. So think of it like a digital showroom that will make buyers confident in your professionalism and your reliability. So again, this is going to help make that good first impression as you're doing pitching. So this is IA. IA came to us through MSU's Food Spice program. IA's business is Sticky Spoons Jam, and IA also purchases a lot of Michigan produce for the jam. Um, so you'll see some examples here as we go through, but so MSU, CRFS, again, through the food spice program, was able to connect IA with us at TLD. And then we worked with IA to really upgrade and enhance the website for Sticky Spoons and also connect all the inventory on the back end. So to make sure that in real time, the inventory that was showing on the website was accurate to what was actually on hand, right? So made everything really nice, made everything really accurate. And then what was great about this, so what I'll back up for a second. One thing that I was really great and proactive about is with the wholesaling was pitching. So what I was just talking about with the pitching, I was like, okay, I really want to get more wholesale customers. That is my goal. And so was super proactive about doing the email outreach and doing the pitch to different local businesses that could either carry the existing product or could potentially do like a collaborative, um, partnership and make a crossover type jam with their product, like if they were a distillery, let's say, right? And make a product. And so they were really, really, really doing a great job of pitching wholesale opportunities. And then what was happening? Oh yeah, okay. So Jamie just put IA's LinkedIn page. Yeah, IA is amazing. You're gonna see some more on IA in a second. IA is incredible. This I love highlighting this example because they took the services they got and just absolutely ran with them, being really proactive with the pitching. And then I want to show you what happened. This is info from the first year after we redid the website. So I had 7 wholesale accounts to 23. So what was happening is that I was pitching, and then those businesses were going to the new website, and it was so beautiful. It was so professional that when they were seeing it, they were like, well, I don't even really need to do like the whole song and dance, whatever. Like, I'm sold. Yes, like I'm in this. I can tell your product's amazing. I can tell you're super legit. I can see what you have on offer. I'm in. Like, what are the next steps, right? So it made it simple and effective for IA to land all these new wholesale accounts. Then what was happening is that as they would go to reorder, because we fixed the inventory syncing on the back end too, is that I wasn't having to do this whole back and forth. Like they could just go on, see what was available, and then send an email and say, I want to, do a reorder. This is what I want. And then I would send the invoice, right? So they wouldn't have to have a lot of back and forth about like, well, hey, what's in stock and da da da, very easy. Because of that, Sticky Spoons reported a 17% increase in revenue in that first year with that new website. This meant that I didn't need to attend as many in-person markets to make sales. And that meant being back at their own property on site, they could increase production, which was fantastic. This is amazing. I love highlighting this. And then increased production meant IA could purchase more products from local farmers. And so that's a win-win, right? So that's a ripple effect, supporting more Michigan producers. And then could have more time for those creative collaborations with local breweries, tea companies, restaurants, and retailers, kind of like I was mentioning before. And it also meant, so not only were they producing more product, back on their property where they make the jam, they were also able to hire more people from the local community seasonally to help them produce, right? So this is like more local produce, more local people hired, more local partnerships with other local businesses, right? It's just like this huge compounding effect, right? And then we were able to connect to Stephanie Pohl, MEDC Voices Project, who was able to do this amazing feature article on sticky spoons. So I don't know if Jasmine, if you can like Google that, look it up, find a link and drop it in. This is a beautiful feature, very, very cool. And then it was noticed by the governor. This was a couple of Black Fridays ago. Governor Whitmer on Threads posted about sticky spoons. Huge, right? So then what happens? Again, even if you're like this, why I'm like, say, even if you're not necessarily like wholesaling, think about marketing on the whole, right? Because that's increased visibility, right? Getting a shout out, even if you're not shouted out by the governor, that's okay because this can happen at a smaller scale in your local community when you get a shout out from raving fans or people who see what you're doing or have a great experience with you, et cetera, et cetera. So that increased visibility started the cycle all over again. So it may seem like a very simple thing, right? Like a website, like, who cares if you just have a Facebook business page? Like that's all you need. No, no, no. Like this is why, like, even a simple, beautiful website that has what you need, it can make a huge, huge, huge difference. Again, I know not everyone is going to have the exact same experience as IA, but it's still like just to be able to have the confidence to pitch and being directing people to that beautiful professional website with, all your products listed and everything is going to help increase your odds of that initial yes and also easy repeat buying. That saves you a lot of time and headache of additional admin work. So next up, securing ongoing revenue. We're almost to the end here. You want to make sure this process is sustainable for you. So kind of like we were already talking about with IA's like reordering, right? You want to think about your reordering schedule to base it on your production capacity. So ask yourself, can people reorder anytime or only at certain times? And how will you communicate this? So this can be thinking about in that initial conversation as you're setting up new wholesale accounts, just communicating that, just letting them know these are our parameters. That's another great thing to think about in a sales contract. These are our parameters. You can also change this stuff. If you are starting this for the first time, take your best guess and you will learn after a while. If it's not working for you, figure out how you need to change it and then communicate that change. Then you can also use automations like pre-scheduled emails that are going to save you time and keep that communication consistent. What I mean by that is let's say you're setting up reminder emails for people to place orders or something else, right? Or like, hey, your delivery's on its way, whatever the thing is. You can pre-make a beautiful templated email from your email marketing platform, and you can duplicate that, maybe change a few details depending on what needs to be changed, and then you can set and pre-schedule them to go out on specific dates and times. So if you have, let's say, like one admin office day, you can sort of batch all of that work at once and just have it and it can go. And then that way you are not having to find time every day to like be in your office and do all that. You can focus on the stuff you really love to do. Some other systems that are going to save you time, syncing inventory across your e-commerce and invoicing software, kind of like in the example I just gave you with IA. Automating email sequences for order confirmations and delivery reminders, reorder nudges, and seasonal promos. So, kind of like I just spoke about, there's a lot, truly so much you can do with email automations. And think about your seasonal marketing strategy. If this makes sense for you, especially with like the products you have and the folks that you're selling to and everything. I mean, even if you're direct to consumer, a seasonal marketing strategy is good to have. But think about quarterly or seasonal campaigns that align with your buyers' needs. Highlight new products, limited runs, or promotional windows. and have consistent visuals and messaging across all channels. And that's where things like having that brand kit, that professional brand kit, can really help. You can use a platform like Canva. With the pro version, you can load in, there's a brand section. You can actually load in all of your brand kit. So your logos, fonts, colors. If you have professional photos taken, you can have them all in there. This is how at TLD we can make all of these presentation decks fairly quickly and easily because we have all of that loaded in. And that way, when you are making graphics for social media or flyers or anything like that, everything can look very consistent and recognizable and professional across any of the marketing that you are doing. And having these marketing strategies, these marketing campaigns is just a really great way to help one, stay top of mind, and two, give people ideas of why they would want your products for, certain things, certain events, certain times of year, et cetera, especially if you're going to be running promotions. And a promotion does not have to be something that undercuts the value of what you're offering either. I always like to give that caveat. Yeah, and then also make sure that you're building those timelines around a delivery schedule and production, other things like that, just to make life easy on yourself too. So some next steps, review your current sales data, like we talked about at the very beginning, your ideal customer profile and your own growth goals. Remember, it's really key that your growth gets to be your growth. You don't have to follow anyone else's path. So honor, who you are, your season of life, what feels exciting to you. Then research expansion options and decide what you want to start with. Review your current brand and marketing materials. Identify what's missing from your wholesale toolkit, or if you're not quite to like a wholesale point yet, can just be your regular marketing toolkit. And then create a short-term plan to fill those gaps before pitching, or again, just before regular selling if you're not going to be pitching yet. And lastly, start small, but really aim for cohesion and consistency across visuals, messaging, and systems that will make you memorable and trustworthy. And I have a few free resources. I know that Jazmin's going to put this link in. So if you are on your phone and cannot scan this QR code with your phone, we have a wholesale readiness checklist that is going to go into the chat. And this is just good. Again, even if you're not there yet, good to have on hand. And then there is also localfoodmarketing.com. So if you'll remember earlier when I said that we have all those other resources that are really great, if you go to localfoodmarketing.com, there's a resources tab, and you will see we have downloadables, articles, webinars, all sorts of things on pretty much every marketing topic. And so you can look in there. The one I referenced earlier is SEO for local farms, but we have lots and lots of stuff. And if you think of something after the fact that you forgot to ask today, or maybe you're watching this on the replay or something, you can always reach out to me at Erika at localdifference.org, and I'm more than happy to help. With that, let's see. Jazmin, should I stop sharing for the Q&A? Or do you want me just to keep this last panel?